It's Friday, August 8th. Let's talk PlayStation. It's actually still Thursday right now as I'm recording this. It's 11:22, but you guys know I record these in the middle of the night, then edit and then upload for Friday morning, but that's besides the point. But let's get into our first news story, which is, we don't have a whole lot of news stories this week. Kind of a slow news week, and that's partly because Gamescom is right around the corner. Sony has a conference for Gamescom, and they have a lot of stuff to announce, so chances are they don't want to announce a lot of things this week, and, they want to save some stuff for their conference. So, but anyway, let's get into it. PS Vita Firmware 3.18 has been released this week, and guess what? Software stability. That's right. If there's one thing Sony has really been on the ball for the past 10 years, it's adding stability to PS3, PS4, and PS Vita. It's so stable, you could balance a watermelon on top of it. Actually, I don't recommend that. Don't put a watermelon on your Vita. Okay, next news story. Sony is being sued by a Northern California resident by the name of Douglas Lador, I believe his name is, and he is suing Sony because Killzone Shadowfall's multiplayer does not run a true 1080p 60 frames per second. Normally, I wouldn't include such a news story because it's not really pertinent to you guys or anything like that. It's not necessarily news that affects you, but again, not much going on. So this did go on. So the guy's really upset, man. He's suing Sony for $5 million because, as we all know, back in March it was revealed through Digital Foundry they analyzed Killzone Shadowfall and realized that while the single player does run 1080p 60 frames per second, the multiplayer does not. And Sony, Guerrilla Games actually used a lot of different sort of technical, know-how to kind of to get the image similar, right? Similar to a true 1080p image. And obviously the techniques Guerrilla Games used to replicate a 1080p image without being true 1080p worked because we all didn't realize it until Digital Foundry analyzed it back in March. But anyway, this guy's real upset, so he wants $5 million from Sony. The sad thing about these lawsuits like these are they're so mindless and stupid, and it's who gives a shit really? But the guy could possibly win. There's been crazy court cases where people have won. There was one where some guy broke into somebody's house, but he got stuck in a window or a chimney or something. So the guy that was robbing the house sued the homeowner, and the robber won, I guess, because he was stuck in the window or chimney for 3 days or something, or he was stuck in a bathroom, I think. So he had to eat towels and soap and or some shit. And he won. I don't know. And there was the hot coffee thing with McDonald's. Some woman spilled hot coffee and got third-degree burns or something, so she sued McDonald's and won. Yeah, crazy stuff has happened, so who knows if this Douglas dude actually wins. And if he does, whatever, dude. Now that is taking the resolution frames per second debate to a whole new level. Anyway, next news story. It was confirmed this week that Sony is ceasing support for PlayStation Mobile on Android devices. So if you have an Android device at 4.2.2 Android, that's it. That's what Sony's going to be supporting. So if you get 4.2.3, it's not going to work, or you might run into some issues trying to use PlayStation Mobile. And if you perhaps buy a new phone or tablet with Android L installed, you can't even access the PlayStation Mobile store anymore. So support for that is pretty much cut off at a certain level of Android. But the support is still continuing for actually playing PlayStation Mobile on a PlayStation Vita. Basically, if you don't have Android L and you do go above 4.2.2, Sony isn't going to guarantee that games are going to work properly or function properly, but they're pretty much cutting it off right there. Now, PlayStation Mobile is an interesting thing because I actually reviewed a bunch of PlayStation Mobile games once the service started. I reviewed all of them on PS Vita, and the games were available for smartphones, but the whole point of that initiative was to have, any developer can jump on. You can publish games for free on it right now. You've got all these different development tools, and you don't have to publish directly to the PlayStation Store and use trophy support or anything. And you've got, two markets, basically. You got the PS Vita and any compatible Android phone. And the best part about it for me was that you've got mobile games, which I enjoy mobile games. I don't have anything wrong. I'm not against them. But you also get buttons. PS Vita has buttons. And that's what I really liked about it. You've got mobile games, which I enjoy, and you've got tactile feedback. The best of both worlds. On PlayStation Vita, granted. Most Android phones don't have the option to give you tactile feedback with buttons. So in a sense, this kind of, adds up. I would also assume Sony's ceasing support because they're just not seeing sales from this from the Android side. I mean, I'm sure they can certainly look into those sort of analytics of where these games are being purchased, and I would assume most of them are coming from the PS Vita side. I mean, Android people, most casual people that just own smartphones, I mean, they're not going to, look into that, use the PlayStation Mobile Store and everything. So I would very much assume this is just Sony saying, we're not seeing anything out of it, so we'll halt production and we'll halt support of it for now. So I can't exactly blame them for this. And also, I mean, PlayStation mobile games really don't sell well to begin with, even on Vita. I mean, when you look at it on Vita, it's a separate store. When you visit the PlayStation Store, you're, greeted with the main PlayStation Store, games with trophies and leaderboard support and anything else. Whereas if you want to see PlayStation mobile games, it's a separate tab. They're just kind of isolated from everything else. And while I like the idea of it, I mean, I totally supported it right when it came out, but it's clear that the support isn't there. And certainly, even when they were starting PlayStation Mobile, it was kind of odd how they were handling it, because they were, segregating it from the main storefront. And it kind of makes me wonder why Sony wouldn't just initiate it, integrate it in the main PlayStation Store, right? Why does it even have to be a separate thing? Why does it have to be called PS Mobile? I mean, do that for just Android. I mean, why do you have to separate it on Vita? I mean, pull them together on the same storefront. Give all these games the same exposure. I mean, some of them are really, really good. Now, granted, some of them are also really, really bad, but that's also part of, quality control. Don't approve every game to be sold out of there, because most of the games I reviewed on PlayStation Mobile were pretty bad. But that was the whole point of mobile, is it's easy access for developers to get into, and it's a good starting point. A lot of games that started on PlayStation Mobile actually graduated to the main store. And I mean, that's fine, but why even do all this to begin with? It just seems like kind of a time sink for Sony when it could have been better built from the beginning. You see what I'm saying? I like the initiative, but it's certainly not looking like, it's certainly not going where they wanted it to be, especially because the whole point of PlayStation Mobile was Vita and Android. We're catering to outside of PlayStation devices. Our games are now on smartphones, and now they're ceasing the production, or they're ceasing support for that main idea of what PlayStation Mobile actually was. It's not working out the way they hoped, and it's also not worth their time. Anyway, moving on to our final news story, which is Gamescom. It is coming up this week, so Sony does have a conference on the 11th, and I'll put maybe the scheduled times for live streams of where you can watch on the bottom of the screen or something. But what's interesting is this past week, Sony has been teasing their conference a little bit by releasing 2 videos. So the first video Sony released, it's some snowflakes kind of, in the wind, and there's some blood going on. And then the second video is an axe slamming down on some wood, more kind of blood looking, and then it says, hashtag PlayStation Gamescom and everything. Right off the bat, a lot of people are thinking, and I of course think this as well, is that we are going to see the re-reveal of Until Dawn at Gamescom this year. So Until Dawn, originally revealed for the PlayStation 3, we now think it's getting moved over to the PlayStation 4 with virtual reality support, so Project Morpheus seems like a given. So now it seems increasingly likely that's what's going to happen. But I really should stress this, Gamescom is a big event. A lot of people are really overlooking this. Gamescom is kind of as big as E3. A lot of major announcements do happen at Gamescom. We do see bundles announced, we do see new games get announced there. Again, it's very much akin to E3. We could see some major stuff come out of this conference. And as we've said, how many times now on this show, Sony owns so many developers. They have 12 developers they own. That's 12 games, 12 PlayStation 4 games that are being worked on right now. And the majority of those developers, we don't know what they're doing. We don't know what Guerrilla Games is doing. Guerrilla Camridge, Media Molecule, Sony Santa Monica. There's more offhand that I don't know. Sony Bend. We don't know what Sony's developers are doing. So, we could see something from any of these developers at Gamescom. If we're going to see, I don't think we're going to see every single one of them, of course. I always stress this. People say, oh, where are all the AAA games on PS4? Well, at the end of the day, you're not going to see them all thrown at you all at once. PlayStation 4 is a console. It's going to be on the market for at least 5 or so years. So that means out of all of Sony's developers, they want to spread out these releases instead of release 10 games in the span of 2 years, and then you got to wait another 3 years for another 10 games to be ready. That's just not how it works. They want to release, 1 or 2 AAA titles every single year. And this year you've got Drive Club. Next year you've got This year you've got Drive Club, Little Big Planet 3, then you've got The Order coming next year, and then Uncharted 4, and then possibly, 16 and 17 and 18. You see what I'm getting at, right? They want to kind of spread it out like that. So we won't see everything at Gamescom, but we might see something. And depending on what we see at Gamescom, will also determine what we'll possibly see at E3 next year, or TGS. Now, TGS isn't as big as it used to be, but we still see some major stuff come out of TGS as well. So, all in all, just keep your eyes peeled. August 11th, Sony's conference. We could see major stuff come out of this show, and we should expect Until Dawn to finally be revealed. But if you want a little recap, we also know that Journey and Unfinished Swan are coming to PS4 as well. Those were pretty much confirmed through Sony's list of games that are going to be at Gamescom. Alright, that's about it for this episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. Sorry it wasn't super news-packed, but again, we do got Gamescom coming up. And as always, every E3, Gamescom, and TGS that comes around, or any major show that Sony does, I do post a follow-up video right after that, recapping the event, and then impressions. You guys should know that I do that by now. So, this, falls on a Monday, so this Monday I will be doing a Gamescom video on Sony's conference, so be on the lookout for that. We'll actually have stuff to talk about by then. Hopefully, there's nothing leaks out by the time I upload this video. I always get so worried about that, but that's the problem with doing videos that are based on news, is by the time you upload it, you could already be missing a major news story, so if something happens, I apologize. But we'll always talk about it once I post a video. Anyway, if you have not seen it already, check out this week's episode of Ryan on Gaming. It is about PlayStation Now. The PS Now open beta is on PlayStation 4, and I have some things to tell you about it regarding the subscription, the one price subscription fee that Sony has not made yet, but they could possibly make, what goes into that, and what Sony needs to do. Why the per title rental thing is still pretty practical, and a lot of people are overlooking some things about that. It's a whole discussion video about PS Now. It could be incredible, but it could be. So if you have not seen that already, go check it out. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys all next Friday for LTPS, but Monday for Gamescom.